I want to show the baking process in 3d-Coat and 3 different ways to make your low poly mesh to bake to. So I'm going to make 3 different objects. And give them a name. I could give this directly a rock texture with a simple shader. So for my purpose later, I want this one to be made of relatively simple shapes. That's that will correspond to one of the retopo ways that I want to show. The rock will correspond to another type of object that will work best with another So this is just going to be the idea of character holding something, and that something is going to be a cube. So maybe this one is going to be a sort of clay figure. Yeah, that's more like it. Let's check if there is something under. Yeah, I want this to be just simple. I don't know how to call that. Tubes, maybe. Just nothing difficult. Nothing difficult for the process that I'm going to use for retopology. And now, so this is going to be the character or the statue or whatever statue. And the third one, which is going to be a cube. So I'm just going to import a cube on brush. I'm going to use the stamp. So how is he going to be holding it? Something like this. So I hold left click and move it around. Oh, it's not high resolution enough. I want to start that over. I increase the resolution of the layer maybe a couple times, and now it's going to be a more precise cube. So how should I place it? Something like this. Maybe I'll move it inside a little bit. Okay. So what should the cube be made of? Um, Something like this. And maybe I'll smooth it by increasing the resolution once more. Okay, so I've got all my three objects. So the first one was the rock. I am going to decimate it. So I right click and make a copy of it. I'll hide the original. I'll call it rock also. And turn it to surface mode. So now it's made of triangles. It's not voxels anymore. And I go to the geometry menu and decimate. Next time I press Alt D because that's my shortcut. So I decimate 50%, and then I press not my shortcut but smooth all, and that next time that will be Alt and F, and I check all these except for the first one. So you see it smooths things a bit. And now in the geometry menu I am going to clean surface, and next time that will be Alt and G. So it cleans it even more. We don't see very well what's happening. Let's switch to another type of view. So that it's still 30,000 triangles, so that's still quite a lot. So now I press Alt D to decimate again, and I smooth by pressing Alt and F, but that's only my own shortcuts. And then I clean surface, then I decimate again, and smooth, and clean surface. Now I'm at 5,000 triangles. I decimate, I smooth, and I clean surface. Now I'm at 2,000. So is it low enough? I think there is a hole here, but doesn't matter. I'll repair that afterwards. Is it low enough? So what I like about this method is that it's all nice triangles. There are no elongated triangles. So if you make rocks, you can use that as a collision mesh, and it shouldn't cause any trouble. So let's go a bit lower and go down to 1000, and now you can start to see some elongated triangles there. So I smooth again and clean surface. So now it's even triangles again. But it doesn't correspond very much to the original. But that's not a problem. We'll take care of that later. So now I right click on my decimated rock and I go to retopol via decimation. And here I click cancel because I've already decimated as much as I want. So I cancel, and that takes me to the retopol room. We were in the sculpt space until now with the retopol mesh. So there is the hole that I saw earlier. Now here in the Vox tree I can delete that decimated rock and bring back the original, and now I'm going to use the brush to move things around to make it fit better the original shape of the sculpt. So I rotate a lot around it to see what fits and what doesn't, and I try not to generate elongated triangles. I try to keep the shape of the triangles nice, but at the same time I want to follow the shapes so that it's not too different. In the case of a rock, it doesn't really matter if it matches perfectly because, well, it's just a rock. It can be any shape. Just close enough for the baking to work. Maybe I should have chosen my shaders later and kept for now with just my default basic shader that helps me see better. It's more difficult to see with this rock texture, to see what's going on under the green retopol mesh. So if I don't have enough geometry, I'll just add some. But for now, I'll just try to make do with what the decimation gave me. See here, there's clearly something missing. So I take the add split tool and click on one vertex and then on an edge, and I can merge this one with this by right clicking. I move the vertices by right clicking with this add split tool, and if I move one vertex on top of another, then it merges them together. I prefer to go back to the brush tool because the add split tool doesn't recalculate the normals every time, and you see that the instant I will touch it with my brush, it recalculates everything. So it's easier to see what's going on. But with the brush I cannot add or merge vertices. So I said that one thing I like about this method is that it covers the whole volume with nice triangles, And the other thing I like about it is that I'm already down at 900 tries, so I want uh, as far down in poly count as I thought was uh, needed, and now all I have to do is to make it fit the shape as much as it can with that number of polygons. So I have my target, um, which was not clearly defined in this case, but let's say I had my target of 1000 triangles, so I just decimate and clean down to that number, and the resulting mesh is quite different from the sculpt. But then I take it to this retopo room in which I get the tools to make it fit. It's a bit tedious maybe, but uh, it's not as big a task as making this from scratch. If I were to just create all these triangles, or if I were to create them, I would make them quads, but um, instead of creating creating them one by one, and it's filled the wrong space like this, and I'm going over the whole rock. It's nice to have a starting point, and that's what the decimation gave me, a starting point. So the mesh, the retopo mesh tries to snap to the sculpt, but here it's having troubles because my sculpt has a hole in it, and that's why I got a hole in the decimated mesh. So let's just go back to the sculpt space, and this is in voxels, but it shouldn't have a hole, but it does. I guess it can happen. So I just smooth it. You'd never see the actual voxels. This is just a representation of the voxels inside, invisible. So let's go back to the retopo room, and now that I repaired the hole, it should be easier to fix this. So if I want to check that there are no other holes, I take the cap tool and I just go mouse over the whole mesh, and if there was a hole, let me show you one hole by deleting a polygon. So with the cap tool, it detects the hole, and it offers me to close it like this. So let's finish brushing this quickly, and maybe deleted some of the things that are not needed. Yeah, we don't need that many polygons down here, so I can take them closer to the edge and use them on something that will be actually visible. I could remove the whole bottom, of course, but I don't like to do that. I like objects to be whole, to have a bottom. So if you wanted to make this a dynamic object, you could. And if I leave it empty on the underside, then it becomes more problematic. Then it could only be used as a completely static object that doesn't move. Okay, so I think that's close enough. And of course, you need to unwrap it, so you could either do it manually by marking seams, or use, oh, okay, so I picked up the edge loops tool to start marking seams. But once you pick this tool, then you get commands under it, and one of them would be automat. So if you want to go full automatic, you can do that. So it's difficult for this tool to find where to go, because it's made of it's really a tool that's designed to work with quads, and I'm working with triangles here. I guess that's why people say when they see a decimated mesh, how are you going to unwrap it? But as you can see, you can still follow. It's not going completely flat under. There is still some problems. So let's go back to the brush tool, yeah, and make sure this is flat. I want the bottom to be real flat. Maybe I could get rid of some of these. It's difficult for me to see in this blue color. So rather than hurt my eyes, I'll just leave it like it is. Okay, so let's go back to this. With the UV preview, I can see what the island is going to look like. So this one, you see it's all gray, so it's fine. And here you see it red in some areas. That means that it's going to, the texture is going to the pixels are going to be bigger than they could. And if it's blue, then there is not enough texture space. But it seems that it's going to be able to unwrap this flat. So maybe I don't need to add more seams. Oh, so let's maybe just add a few and see if it makes a difference. If it makes it turn grayer, then I'll leave that in place. This one doesn't work. Seems to be getting redder. Let's try unwrapping this to see how it looks, and then I can shuffle back and then back UV. Well, I guess it could be better. Oh, I forgot this one. I can shrink it. Okay, so I guess it could be more ideal. There's a lot of wasted space here, but maybe we could fit the cube in here later. So for now, I can hide this rock and go back to the sculpt space and hide my rock and take care of the statue. For the statue, I want to use another method, and it's called retopology, and it's going to generate the mesh automatically. It wouldn't have worked that well on the rock, but on this one it might be okay. The trick is that this number here should be always under 100,000 triangles for this operation. Otherwise it would take just too long. And the other trick is to find the appropriate number of polygons that are going to be needed to create this mesh. So I think that 3,000 triangles should do it. the count here, the poly count is in quads. So I'll type uh, 1500, and that will give me 3000 triangles. And I leave everything as it is here. I don't know if it's the default or if it's uh, what I've set myself before. So best quality and capture a lot of detail. And just press OK. And then it asks me to mark areas of higher polygon density, but that has never worked for me, so I just click next. And now it wants me to draw strokes to produce proper edge flow, and they advise not to do it at first, to just try without it and see if it works. And if it doesn't work, then you just go delete and go back and start over. So this is the resulting mesh that I got in a few seconds. So you have to inspect it with the cap tool to see if there are holes, and I see one here. So I just close it and repair it. I take cap again, and there seems to be no more holes. So you see that this was easy and much quicker than the previous method. I need to create a new UV set and call it statue, unless I unwrap everything on the same material. Now let's make them different. So I click on this little icon here that will select all the polygons on this retopo object, and I move select to statue. And on this drop down menu I select statue, so that's a blank space to unwrap this one. So now if I take the edge loop tool, it works much better. Because it's squads, right? Maybe I will want to brush this around a little bit. And shift brush to relax. So when I over an area, I can see on the right what islands it's going to produce, and I quite like this one. So I don't need to work more on this area. On this, if I unwrap this as it is, I just get this blob with many overlapping uh, uh, oh, by the way, I didn't get 3,000, I got 3,700. So maybe if I wanted to go down a bit, I could collapse. So I'm hitting control. I'm hitting control and left clicking. To collapse edge loops. Now I'm down to almost 3,000. Let's finish unwrapping. So this should work. I unwrap. So this area is not the best, but at least it's got just this one seam. I prefer to have just that one seam and some distorted texture here than to have more seams and risk having some of them showing later. So now on to the rock. I can hide this one and go back to the sculpt space. I hide my statue and I show the cube. I can press here to show the object in view. And for this one, I want to use a third method. I'm going to go directly to the retopo room, and with the add split tool, I'll just create the geometry right there. So I don't want to use any automatic process for this one, because it's simple enough that I can get it done in a few minutes, and I get to choose how it's made. Let's pick the point faces tool, and I just hover until it shows me what I want to do, and I right click and it creates the polygon. You just have to move around a bit until it guesses what you want to do. This is some people's favorite tool for working in 3d-Coat on the retopo mesh. Because what you can also do is left click to make points. Usually, well, you do that on the object, of course. Let's do it here. No, it doesn't want. Okay, let's hide this. Create a new layer. So if I create points, it will work as if those were really already vertices, and give me choices based on that. So that's really fast. People love that, I think. But that's not what I want now. So I'll call this one cube. So you saw that when I used a retopo via decimation, it created the name directly, but in other cases I have to name them myself. As for the unwrapping, let's see what it offers. First I have to assign it. So I click on this icon again to select all of it, and I add a new UV set for the cube, and I move select to the cube. Now I select cube in this drop down, and I have my new space. I click on one of the UV tools to get these to appear, and I click automap, and I don't like the result. So I clear seams, and I'll do it myself. So what kind of unwrapping do I want? It's always a bit like peeling an orange. It doesn't really like what I did here. Okay, so it detects this as a strip, which is fine, except it's going to take a lot of space, so I prefer to cut it in half. And this one I'll do like I did on the other side. To help it unwrap it. Okay. So now let's go back to the sculpt room, and I have my three objects: the rock, the statue, and the cube. And I want to bake all that. And some of these objects collide with each other. So if I bake it all at once, 3d-Coat will not know what is part of what object. But still, I want to bake them all at once. So for it to work, I need to go to the bake menu and check the box that says name correspondence for baking, and that means that 3d-Coat is in fact going to bake 3 times. It's going to look like if it's doing all at once, but it's going to bake each object separately: the rock, the statue, and the cube, as if they were the only thing in the scene, so that the hand of the statue will not interfere with the cube, and the feet of the statue will not interfere with the rock. When you select this, it's always a good idea to click on this correspond retopo object with sculpt mesh, and it opens a box that tells you whether retopo objects and volume names do correspond correctly or if there is a mistake. And in this case, you have rock, statue, cube, and rock, statue, cube. So everything corresponds. So now all I need to do is to go back to the bake menu. Oh, before I do that, I want to select the brush just in case I need it. Very important, always before baking, take the brush, and also in case you used symmetry, you go to the symmetry menu and always disable symmetry before baking, because that can cause issues that you will not detect right away. If you do a lot of painting afterwards and then you discover much later that there is a problem with the mesh because of the baking with symmetry, then you have to go back and start over, or make do with just repairs, and that's not very good. So do those two things. Select the brush and disable symmetry, and then you go to the bake menu, and there is this one in yellow, easy to find, bake with normal map. Now it's showing me the outer shell. That's the distance at which 3d-Coat is going to scan away from the retopo mesh to see if there is something there to bake. And the inner shell is the same thing but inside the object. So let's leave the default, the values. It's not the default, but it's what I've used in the past. Last time I used the tool, I guess. Let's just leave it like this and see if it works, and if it doesn't work, I'll just bake again. So then I have many choices, one of which is the texture size, and yeah, maybe for the cube I don't need much, and for the rock let's keep it low too, and yeah, maybe even less for the statue, because so I leave everything else unchecked and click OK. So that's because I have one of the latest beta, and it's locking some layers, so it's giving me a warning about it. And I haven't checked it, not to remind me anymore. So I'm still in the retopo space, the baking is done. So now what I want to do is go to the Vox tree and hide the objects, the sculpt objects, but you can still see them because now it's the paint objects that we're seeing. So I leave the retopo room and go to the paint room, and that's the final mesh that I'm going to export, except that I made some mistake. I forgot to unwrap the statue, I guess. So I'll just delete that. So let's see if everything else is in place. The cube seems alright, and the rock is very low detail under, because I made the island very small. And it looks like I forgot to unwrap the statue. So let's just delete all the paint objects. And the layers that correspond, that's the normal map, the rock, the statue, and the cube. And I go back to the retopo room. I make visible the three objects, and I select the statue, oops, a statue here, and I open the UV preview, and I see this mess. I have no idea what happened. What did I forget to do? I think yeah, this. I didn't do the arms either. I clearly remember marking the seams for the head. I have no idea what went wrong. I did all this, right? So now I unwrap, and everything looks alright for the rock, for the cube. So let's bake again. I've disabled so many navigation things that I don't know how to show the whole texture. So I didn't like my unwrapping here. Let's unwrap again. Oh, I unwrapped the wrong one. It's the rock that I want to unwrap. And I don't need this island to be that big. Oh, I click Unify UV. Okay, Control Z. So let's see what else is wrong. So there was that problem here. And maybe 1024 is just not enough for this poor rock. Yeah, here was the problem. So the statue seems okay. Maybe it would be better in a different color. But I like this green brim cube. So let's delete again. And delete the layers. And go back this time to the sculpt room and maybe change the shader for the statue and maybe some rusted metal. Okay, so retopo room, bake with normal map, and it worked at default, so let's leave it like that. And this time the rock should be to 2K. And let's bake. So this time I got some artifacts because I should have increased the resolution of the rock. So if I simply increase it now, it will smoothen it. It was so I don't know. I don't want to do that. So I create a new layer. I increase the resolution of the layer and I merge visible. I delete this one and I'll check inside. I'll select the rock shader that I have and it still has some strange lines, so I turn it to surface mode. It's a little better. It's 1 million polygon. Let's increase it. Now it's 4 million polygons, and I'm going to smooth it. So that's taking a bit of time. It didn't work very well, so I'm going to do it manually. Yeah, just smooth those areas that show geometric lines. To make it look a bit more natural. So I hope it will be a bit better now. Let's turn everything back to visible. Did I delete everything? No. Paint object. Layer on the rock, statue and the cube. Go back here, retopology room. Let's this time check that everything is still alright. Cube, yeah. Bake with normal map. Change that. And okay. And something went wrong. Okay. So what went wrong? I have volume 10, and that should be called rock. I have statue, cube, and I check. I told you each time I should do this, and it should return a message that everything is alright. Okay, so now I have rock. That's a bit more like I wanted, except for this little mistake here. Maybe because I changed the shape too much. And my metal statue, it's mysteriously holding a green rubber cube. Press W to show this is the... I don't see the lines. Yeah, they are barely visible. So this is the low poly, all baked, and this shows the normal map. This shows the roughness map. So the black areas must be the metal areas. Let's turn back to material view. Yeah, that's the metal. I have no way of showing the metal map short of exporting, but oh yeah, here, but I don't know how to zoom in this window. I can show text metal. Oh yeah, it shows it on the object. Okay. So you see, I don't have to worry about generating any map. It's just all done from the shader, and some of those shaders I made and some I have by default in the software, and some other ones I made with textures that I found on sites that have public domain textures. Okay, so let's switch back to color, and you could export directly as FBX, but I prefer to always export as an object. And always choose Blender cycles, because when I'm going to take this to Blender, the textures are going to be assigned that way, and it just exports. Well, the rest is just taking it to Blender and importing and exporting as FBX and uploading to Sansar. So there is absolutely no need to edit the textures. That's my cube. Statue reflection. Why is it so small? That's the cube reflection. Why did it do that? Okay, so anyway, those are the textures. Generated. This looks like a little town. Okay, that's all I wanted to show. Cheers.